Welcome to Rooftop Sessions. My name is Gilla, and today we're going to be talking about emotions. Now, emotions are very interesting because emotions are what fuel the creation of everything and the destruction of everything in this world. Now, emotions are of two kinds, of positive emotions and negative emotions. The way I like to think about it is like a spectrum. So you have your positive emotion pole here, and you have your negative emotion pole here. Excuse the background noise in India. Anyway, so you have your spectrum here, positive and negative. And here on the positive end, you would have extreme ecstasy, bliss, joy. And here on the negative end, you would have despair, dread, depression at extreme levels, at a near death level. And everything in between is ranging and going between these two extremes, these two poles. That's the way I like to think about emotion. But emotion is extremely powerful because it is what creates the events that occur in our lives, in human life. And I've identified a couple of the main emotions that we feel, both positive and negative. So on the positive end of the spectrum, you would have happiness, compassion, love, and peace. And on the negative end of the spectrum, you would have fear, anger/hatred, greed, and jealousy. So these are some of the emotions that we all experience on a daily basis. And these emotions are what create our moods, right? Feelings create moods. And so when we say we're in a bad mood, it's really a feeling that's leading to a larger state of being that affects all your actions, your thoughts, right? And I'm sure you guys have noticed this. Thoughts have power, immense power, right? If you have a certain thought in your mind, you can't really hide it. It's going to reflect in the world. Maybe not right now, but eventually, if you look and you track these thoughts, the thoughts do express themselves in the world. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So thoughts are what fuel our feelings, and feelings are what guide our moods. And our moods largely determine what we do and who we are on a daily basis. Now, I was surprised by the total lack of research that's being done on emotions. With something that's so big, that guides our lives so much, that influences our decisions, there's not much research being done on it. It's hard to understand because on a biological level, there are several neurological processes going on in the body and in the brain. When the dopamine goes up, you feel better. When it goes down, you feel depressed. So that's what's happening in the brain. And you have the limbic system, which contains the amygdala, hippocampus. And so you have the nervous system and the limbic system dealing with the emotions on a physical level. But one could possibly argue that moods and our emotions originate with thought, because thought is what starts pretty much the entire process. And as I say that, I would like to take it back one step and bring up the fact that there's no information coming into the senses, then there are no thoughts, right? Our thoughts come from our interaction with the senses, with the world, right? We see something, we hear something, we smell something, then comes the thought, oh, that smells good, I like it. Oh, that doesn't smell good, I don't like it. Somewhere in the middle, oh, I don't care, it doesn't matter, right? So we start making judgments and decisions based on these sensory inputs. So therefore, senses come first, then come the thoughts, which lead to emotions and moods, and basically create your experience during the day. So an Age of Enlightenment thinker, David Hume, suggested that emotions are based on fears and desires. And I think there's some truth to that, because our fears are such powerful motivators, even subconsciously, where we don't even realize how they're guiding us and how they're biasing us on a day-to-day basis. Fears and desires, we are constantly motivated to achieve things, to pursue things, to seek things in this world. And the root of that is a desire. And again, taking a step back, I think desire comes from whether you like something or you don't like something, which has its origin in sensory information. And another important point that I'd like to bring up is that we feel emotions on the conscious level and on the subconscious level. There are no emotions in the deep sleep state. In your conscious state, of course, we feel emotions. In your subconscious state, in the dream state, there are emotions. When you're dreaming, you can feel fear if you're being chased by somebody, or something's falling on you, or you're jumping off a cliff or something like that. I don't know. There's so many kind of dreams that we can have. So we can feel fear in dreams. We can feel love in dreams. We can feel all the emotions in that subconscious dreaming state. So the only time that emotions disappear, along with the sensory information, is in the deep sleep state. Because when you're in your subconscious state, it's been shown that you still pick up sensory information in your subconscious state, because you're not fully knocked out. You're not fully out of this world. You're still picking up sensory information through sound, not through sight if your eyes are closed, but through sound and through smell and through touch. So you're still picking up sensory information, but in the deep sleep state, there are no emotions. So another very potent aspect of emotions is the relationship between emotions and memory. If a memory is tied to a very powerful emotion, for example, that memory comes up much stronger and it's retained much more in the mind rather than a memory where the emotional experience was not as strong. For example, if you look back in your life and you think of an example where you felt immense amount of fear, if I ask you to remember a time maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you're at least in your 20s, sorry for the people who are not in their 20s, but if I ask you to go back 10, 15 years ago and I say, try to remember a moment when you were really fearful, most likely you'll have an event or a memory that's going to come up very strongly, and you might even be able to feel that emotion as you think about it right now. That emotion is stored in our nervous system, in our brains, in our bodies. That emotion is stored, right? But if I ask you to remember something that was just average, just an average memory from 10, 15 years ago, you might be able to remember it. But I would wonder, is that event in your memory as strong as the one tied with the powerful emotion? So yeah, this is a very interesting point, the relationship between emotion and memory. And they both kind of work hand in hand, right? We sometimes look back in our past and we think of times we felt these emotions, and that biases our decisions today. We sometimes avoid doing things because we felt a certain negative emotion tied to that event in the past. That affects our present. Similarly, if we felt a positive emotion in the past, that influences our current decisions. For example, you ate the most delicious pizza in the world like 2 months ago. And then your mind is like, oh, I want to feel happy. Let me go get some pizza, right? That's memory using emotion to guide our current action. So that's the third point that I want to get to, action, right? From the senses comes the thought, comes the emotion, forms the memory, and then the memory creates the action, right? That's the process that's going on. And so once it's led to action, once a physical thing is done, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're being fueled by negative emotions and you act out and you do some negative actions, that's going to affect you. You're going to get that back. You're going to get that energy back. And when you feel more negative emotions, then you're going to be compelled to do even more negative things. And then that's going to build an ongoing cycle. Similarly, if you do a positive action, you feel good. You want to feel good all the time. So you're going to keep doing positive actions to feel good, and that's going to set a positive cycle. But as you know, it's not that simple. It's a lot more complicated. Emotions are a mix of all sorts of things and all sorts of events. And psychologists have traced it back to our childhood and our early years, in our first year of our life, in our first 5 years, when all of our influences and all of our behaviors were modeled. As children, we form memories and we make sense of the world through our parents and our immediate surroundings. So we're just picking up sensory information and we're reacting to it in an emotional way. And these emotions that stem from these childhood days can affect us when we are adults. So how many adults do you see that makes decisions that it feels like a child is making those decisions. They're thinking like a child, right? And they are thinking like a child. They're using their childhood memories to dictate their actions as adults. And as I stated before, what are adults doing? Adults are creating things on a massive scale, right? Adults are creating the world that we see. That's what adults are doing. They're creating. Children aren't creating. Adults are creating the entire world that we see. When these creations are fueled by emotions, they can be on both ends of the spectrum. I'm not trying to be biased here. I'm just saying that they are on both ends of the spectrum. They can be either really positive or really negative or somewhere in between. And now the relationship between emotions and the nervous system in your body is very interesting. So when you feel fear, your heart races. You feel like jitters all around your body. You get goosebumps. When you feel angry, you feel like tensed and clenched, and you feel like fire is rising inside of you. Same thing with hatred. Same thing when you feel jealous, you're feeling like this anger coming up. You're kind of like self-depreciating yourself, because that's what jealousy is based on. It's a sense of low self-worth. And likewise with positive emotions, if you feel ecstatic and elated, you feel light, right? You don't feel heavy, you feel light, and you feel joyful, and you feel floaty, and you feel like wavy and like vibey. You feel great, right? So the experiences of the body tied to these emotions is just a very interesting thing. And I think what is just amazing is the fact that these emotions are what guide all our decisions and the entire world pretty much, right? If you take any part of the world, it's based on emotions, right? We talk about the stock market, it's based on emotions. We talk about electric cars, startups, apps, technology, everything human made is based on emotions. So emotions have a really evolutionary basis, right? We have so many evolutionary fears. Why is it so hard to break out of the status quo and do something different, right? Why is it so hard to quit a job, right? It's because we don't want to feel rejected by society. We don't want to feel like the odd one out. We don't want to be rejected, because in the past, rejection meant death. And death is the biggest fear of all fears is death. Because death means no more identity, no more I. This person doesn't exist in death. And that's the biggest fear of all fears. So therefore, emotion has a very evolutionary history. And that's something we need to recognize, because this evolutionary history is what's creating the world around us. This evolutionary history is what's guiding us and moving us forward, right? Whoa, it's a fly. This period of destruction in World War II, that was a very negative event, and that was caused by a lot of negative emotion, right? Pent up by a small group of people who put their emotion and transferred that emotion to a larger group of people, and that emotion spread like a virus or like a disease. That emotion was spreading like crazy, right? And that emotion led to all these events. We can look at our future and we can say it's being guided by all these emotions. So we need to take time, and we need to refine our emotion, make it better, make it more positive and balanced, and look at the negatives, acknowledge the negatives, not reject the negatives, acknowledge the negatives, and try to learn from them and convert them towards the positive, right? We don't have to live in a sense of doom and gloom that negatives are bound to happen. Yeah, negatives will happen. But to build a positive future, we need to refine our emotion within ourselves. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Rooftop Sessions. My name is Gila. If you like this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be talking a lot about philosophical stuff that's important to me, ideas, things that are happening in the world, possibilities, everything philosophical. I'd like to dive deep into that. So thank you for watching this video, and I will catch you guys soon.